the Russian guy just got arrested. He is known online as Peter Severa, or just Severa. He's also known as Peter Levashov. And according to spamhouse.org, he is a, quote, spammer who writes and sells virus spamming spamware and botnet access. He's probably involved in the writing and releasing of viruses and Trojans. He's one of the longest operating criminal spam lords on the internet. Now, the reason this kind of criminal arrest is now American politics news is because one of the things that we've all had to learn in reporting and understanding the story of the Russian government hacking our presidential election last year, one of the things we've had to get familiar with in terms of how the Russian government, the Russian military, the Russian intelligence services mount those kinds of attacks, we have had to learn about the overlap in Russia between criminal hacking, hacking for profit, hacking just for thievery, the overlap between that and Russian government intelligence work. I mean, yes, America is still king of the world when it comes to online criminal activity, hacking, spam, stealing, and stuff. But Russia's pretty good, too. And over the years, an unusual thing has emerged in the Russian government. The Russian intelligence services, including their military intelligence service, they have moved beyond just trying to tap bright young computer science undergrads to enlist and join the spy services. They have moved beyond that sort of recruiting of people into the intelligence services from the computer world. And they instead have moved into the criminal part of the hacking world. They have taken great pains to co-opt the most successful criminal hackers and spam artists operating illegally in Russia. Rather than prosecute them, instead they use them. They essentially piggyback on that criminal activity and take over some of that criminal activity for their own purposes in Russian intelligence. So Russian criminal hackers are stealing personal data and financial information from, for example, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of users of yahoo.com. Okay, fine, that's a criminal act. They're doing it for profit. But Russian intelligence then uses that hack to specifically target individual journalists and opposition figures who they want to go after for political reasons, for government reasons. That's the way it works. And with this guy who just got arrested in Spain, that particular overlap between criminal work and intelligence work for Russia, that overlap is very, very clear with him. As long ago as 2012, there was open source reporting in Russia that he had crossed over from just being a famous criminal hacker to working for the FSB, working for the successor agency to the KGB. He was reported to be making the pitch to other hackers in closed online communication forums, asking other hackers to do work on behalf of the Russian government, on behalf of the Russian spy service. Also, his own online criminal activity was implicated in a pro-Putin Russian government operation. I'll quote this part from today's New York Times. Quote, Peter Severa's spam operation ran a sophisticated, evolving family of computer viruses. And I'm going to mispronounce these, but I'll do my best. A sophisticated, evolving family of computer viruses called Wolodak and later Kelehos. I have no idea if that's how you say them. But look at this, quote, the Kelehos virus had been devised to spread spam, but during the Russian election in 2012, it was used to send political messages to email accounts on computers with Russian IP addresses. And those emails linked to fake news stories saying that the businessman who was running for president against Vladimir Putin had come out as gay. So this guy was one of the most famous criminal spam kingpins in the world. These viruses and botnet operations that he built for his spam empire apparently had made him fabulously wealthy. When BuzzFeed News wrote up this story today, they quoted a fellow Russian hacker as describing Peter Levashov as living a lifestyle so lavish, quote, it would have embarrassed an oligarch. So he's a top 10 internationally listed criminal spam kingpin. He's reported to have recruited other hackers online to work for the Russian intelligence service. His own viruses were put to work in a Russian election a few years ago, spreading fake news that Putin's opponent was gay. And now he's been arrested in Spain. And get this, he was arrested in Spain at the request of the FBI. And the FBI is not talking about why they wanted him arrested or what this is about. but in Russian language media reporting on this arrest today, and in Spanish media reporting on this arrest today, because again, the arrest was in Spain, multiple publications have run quotes from this guy's wife, who was with him in Barcelona when he got arrested, and she says what he told her about why he was being arrested is that had to do with a computer virus that he had created that was related to Donald Trump winning the presidential election in the United States last year. So this guy has been a known, notorious spammer for years. For years. But he has traveled freely around the world. He has never been arrested that we know of. He has never behaved as if he feared arrest. Certainly, he never behaved as if he feared arrest by the FBI by traveling to a country that had an extradition treaty with the United States like Spain does. But he got picked up in Barcelona, and now he's in a Spanish prison because the FBI asked for Spanish authorities to pick him up. Why? And why now? Should we believe these quotes from his wife, who says that he told her his arrest had something to do with the U.S. election? We don't know. The FBI will not say. For what it's worth, the no comment that the FBI is giving on this story, it came from the criminal division of the FBI, not from the national security division of the FBI. So maybe the origin of the no comment is significant in some way. I don't know. But this does come at a time when some new pieces are starting to fall in place in terms of the pace and the scope and the focus of the investigation into the Russia attack and this crucial question of whether or not the Trump campaign was involved in that attack. The Financial Times reported last week that the FBI has now created a special unit in Washington to oversee all aspects of this investigation. It had previously been reported that the investigation was spread out among multiple FBI field offices all around the country. Apparently, they will now start operating out of a single unit in Washington. CBS has recently reported that although the FBI investigation didn't start until July of last year, according to CBS, the focus of the FBI investigation has now shifted to months earlier than that. CBS reports that the FBI is now looking at the initial Russian hack of the Democratic Party, which happened all the way back in March. They are reportedly looking into whether or not people associated with the Trump campaign might have helped direct that initial hack, might have helped direct those Russian efforts as early as last March, when the hacking and the stealing first started. In addition to that, on Thursday night, as the U.S. Navy launched Tomahawk missiles at a Syrian airbase, one of the pieces of news that night that got kind of lost in the sauce as everybody covered that military strike was word that the CIA had come across news about the Russian attack and about the Trump campaign's possible connections to that attack that the CIA apparently found very alarming last summer. According to the New York Times, in late August, CIA Director John Brennan was so concerned about what the CIA was seeing, about increased evidence of Russia's election meddling, that he began a series of urgent individual briefings for 8 top members of Congress. Quote, "It is unclear what new intelligence might have prompted the classified briefings, but concerns were growing internally and publicly at the time about a significant Russian breach of the Democratic National Committee, and the CIA," this is important, the CIA began seeing signs of possible connections to the Trump campaign. In an August 25th briefing for then-Senator Harry Reid, John Brennan indicated that unnamed advisors to Mr. Trump might be working with the Russians to interfere in the election. So the CIA thought that that was enough of a possibility that they needed to individually start briefing senior leadership in Congress. Not just the Russian attack, Trump involvement in the attack. So, in terms of division of labor and national security law here, the CIA can only handle the foreign part of this, right? The CIA can only handle the Russian attack part of this. When it comes to the possibility of the Trump campaign or any other Americans helping that effort, well, then you're talking about Americans. That's a domestic issue. That becomes an American law enforcement operation, right? And that sort of thing is not handled by the CIA. That has to be handled by the FBI. But this new reporting indicates that the CIA last summer somehow came into possession of information that it found sufficiently alarming that the director did one-on-one briefings with the leadership in Congress, not to tell them about Russia interfering at the election, but to tell them about Russia interfering with the election and the distinct possibility that the Trump campaign was helping Russia do that. So The Trump campaign side of that is something that the FBI would have to handle ultimately, not the CIA. And because of that, because that's FBI territory, at that point, the investigation becomes a black box to us in terms of what we know about it, or at least in terms of what the FBI will say about it. But whether or not they are talking about these things, we can see what they're doing. And one of the things they have just done is request the arrest of this Russian intelligence-linked criminal mega hacker who's now sitting in a jail cell in Barcelona, presumably about to be extradited to the United States. And the FBI won't say beep about it. So there's a lot going on in the world right now. There's a lot going on in politics. There's a lot going on in the news that doesn't look like politics until you scratch the surface a little bit. But as Secretary of State Rex Tillerson prepares to go to Moscow, as this administration continues to enjoy its first real bout of shallow good press about their bombing 2,000% of all the planes in Syria, the one potentially existential scandal of this administration really is still moving. Tonight it's moving in Barcelona. Tomorrow, who knows? Watch this space.